Once the 2017 preseason started and Cam Meredith tore up his knee really, really bad, I know myself, and I'm sure plenty of other Bears fans are like, ooh, that's not good. This was the top returning producer at the position for the Bears at wide receiver in 2016. You're hoping to get even better things potentially out of him in 2017 with another year under him. And already knowing that there's questionable depth there at the position, you're relying upon a guy like Kevin White, who unfortunately just had not been able to stay healthy and would later vindicate, indeed, that he can't stay healthy because he hurt himself coming out for pregame introductions in the opening game of the year. No, that's not technically what happened, but if it was what I told you happened, would you believe it? Maybe, just maybe. But talking about Cameron Meredith, now he's out all of 2017. We know that receiving position is going to be a real struggle for the Bears, and it was. It was easily the biggest single weakness they had on their team. They just didn't have guys on the outside that could consistently create separation, get open, or even if they did occasionally, they couldn't catch the damn ball. They didn't make big plays. Not the best position to put your young rookie quarterback Mitchell Trubisky in. So, 2017 kind of ends up being a loss. It's a lost year for Cameron Meredith, and in some ways it's a lost year in terms of overall growth and development for the kid that the team traded up to take second overall. But now as we get into the offseason, the Bears have a decision to make. What are they going to do with Cam Meredith coming off of this significant knee injury? Well, they had a couple of options. They could have put a second-round tender on him, which would have meant they were committing $2.9 million of guaranteed money into him for 2018. But if another team did come in and make an offer to him, whether to that number, a little bit more, or give him a big-time contract, the Bears would have up to 5 days to match. And if they matched, they got that number, whatever the other team assigned to him. See what happened with Kyle Fuller when he got the transition tag put on him. Or the Bears could let him go somewhere else and get a second-round pick in return from the team that ultimately signed Meredith. Ultimately knowing that Cam Meredith, coming off of one season that was somewhat productive in 2016, where he was really the only guy, and even then he still didn't break 1,000 yards, there's probably not going to be any teams that are coming around barking for him for a second-round pick. So it comes down to, are you willing to gamble $2.914, I think is the actual number, $1 million guaranteed into Cam Meredith for 1 year in 2018? Because if you put the second-round tender on him, it's good night, Irene. Nobody's barking. Nobody's coming for him. Or do you play the game and roll the dice a little bit and put the original round tender on him, which for Cam Meredith, undrafted player, means there's no draft pick compensation. Meaning you offer him $1.907 million, but if another team comes in and gives him an offer and you decline to match it, you lose the player and you get no compensation in return. So that potentially is the riskier option. While, yes, you would in theory be guaranteeing him less money if another team comes in and goes above and beyond that 1 year tender offer, now you've had your hand forced and the market has been set for you. And that's ultimately what happened. The New Orleans Saints came in with an offer of 2 years, $9.6 million plus incentives, which is about a reported $5.4 million in guaranteed money. So they came in with an offer, and the Bears had 5 days to decide. We're either going to match this or we're not. And it either means we have Cam Meredith for 2 years or we don't and we have nothing in return for him. And for some reason that is still unbeknownst to me, the Bears chose not to match it. I can't answer this as to why. Like, confidently, definitively, I don't get it. I just don't get it. I know there's going to be a lot of emphasis on well, they should have put a second-round tender on him anyways. Well, maybe, but knowing that if you put the second-round tender on him, nobody's going to come barking for him. You've got him now for 1 year at that $2.9 million figure. If he goes out there and has something close to what he had in 2016, again in 2018, especially coming off of the knee injury, you know you're going into next offseason with the thought of either having to put a lot more money into him or you're still watching as somebody else takes him away for a lot more money and you don't get much in the way of compensation in return. You might get a compensatory pick in the 2020 draft, and it wouldn't be a very good one. So, to me, the focus shouldn't so much be on they should have just put the second round tender on him anyways. No. To me, the focus is you let the New Orleans Saints set the market. The market wasn't that particularly bad for a team with the amount of cap space that it still has left. There was absolutely no financial reason that I can find to justify why the hell the Bears wouldn't match this offer sheet and keep Cameron Meredith. 2 years, $9.6 million. The total guaranteed money, $5.4. So what you're telling me is, let's say they would have given him the original second round tender and paid him for that for 2018. It's basically a doubling minus a little bit of that original second round tender, where the Bears would have 2 years of cost certainty with this guy. Maybe he struggles at times to get fully back in 2018, but he starts to show you something. You still have him again in 2019 in a one-year prove-it type of situation for not a whole lot of damn money. I mean, you're willing to give Trey Burton quite a bit of money for very little NFL production, and I understand the upside in the system fit and everything else, but why in the hell wouldn't you keep Cameron Meredith when the cap figure just isn't that much? Especially knowing now that you let a Cam Meredith go, where he could have, in theory, if he came back healthy, been your number 2 wide receiver on the outside opposite Allen Robinson. You're now going into the 2018 season, as it currently sits, with a receiving core of Allen Robinson, Taylor Gabriel, Kevin White, like that even counts as much as it breaks me to say it, and Josh Bellamy. That's your receiving core. So you were basically Allen Robinson, who was a great signing for them, but comes with risk. You are another injury, knee injury or other type of injury, or maybe slow in the progression of his recovery from that knee injury away from being about a slot receiver that Atlanta didn't care enough to keep. A guy who can't stay healthy, who was a former first-round pick 3 damn years ago in Kevin White. And Josh Bellamy, who you gave a tender to, and nobody came sniffing at the door. That's your receiving core. You're basically right back into the same position in 2017. And you would think with a young quarterback and a new offensive-minded head coach, where you're trying to make the offense a larger part of your identity, and you're trying to fit it around this young quarterback, you would not want to gamble on a position like wide receiver that was such a huge detriment to the offense in 2017. If anything, I would think you would want to invest even more cap money into it, and you would want to potentially overload at that position and have some tough decisions about who you're going to use and who you're even going to be able to keep. And now, not only that, you're heading into this draft where you've just now created a need that didn't necessarily be created, for what reason is still unbeknownst to me, without a third-round pick, because, again, you had to part with that third-round pick when you got duped by the 49ers to move up from 3 to 2 in last year's damn draft for a wide receiver class that is not necessarily the best this go-round. There are some guys that can play, but there are quite a number of notable big-name guys that I feel like are severely overrated, and I'm not the only one that thinks that. So you're talking about potentially massively reaching, or a little bit reaching, on a wide receiver at number 8 to plug a hole and fill a need that in part you helped create when you could have used that 8th overall pick on another position in the roster. Or if you're talking about even trading back, it's still a position where you could be saying whether they took a Cortland Sutton or a Calvin Ridley, they both bring positives and negatives to the table. You could still be potentially passing on superior talent at other positions to fill a need that, again, you freaking created. I can't jive with Ryan Pace on this one. It was one of these things is there's just not a lot of money at stake. But the payoff could have been really, really nice. And even if the payoff wasn't that great, the cap number wasn't that large for a team that sat there and had all of this cap space, especially with some of the moves they made this offseason to create even more cap space. This is one of these examples to me of pinching pennies for the sake of pinching pennies, and you don't get any enjoyment out of those damn pennies because you spend too much time pinching them and worrying about them to sit there and enjoy some of the fruits of your labor. You create all that salary cap space to get these kind of low-risk, potentially medium to high-reward contracts for guys like this. The Saints were doing you a favor. If they were to come in and offer double this amount or added an extra year or two to it, and you're talking about $10, $15 million guaranteed, then that may be a different conversation, but even then, maybe not. This is $5.4 million of guaranteed money, where your original tender you gave was $1.907 million. You basically bump that up by another million in 2018, double it, minus a little bit in 2019, and you've got Cam Meredith there for 2 years. Sometimes it feels like Ryan Pace outflanks himself, outdoes himself, and outthinks himself. And this is why it could be hard at times to fully embrace him as general manager of the Bears. As while he does make some good moves and has made some good draft selections, it is at times it feels like he tries to out-sleuth and outmaneuver himself, and this most certainly feels like one of these cases where he outflanked and outfoxed himself, and he just didn't need to.